And just in terms of the deviations that Dr. Andel Pillay has been accused of instituting, so who needs to tighten the screws then in terms of the deviation? Is the Department of Health or is the Treasury itself?
You'd remember, Simpiwe, that during the COVID-19 pandemic, at the beginning of the procurement for personal protective equipment during the era was not normal. Then there were scandals of corruption, maladministration, and fraud, which surfaced against Dr. Bandile Masuku Kuselatiko, the spokesperson of former spokesperson rather of President Ramaphosa, Loyiso Masuku, the wife of Dr. Bandile Masuku, then the minister of finance, Tito Mboweni, then changed the procurement around PPEs, around the COVID-19 pandemic to make sure that they try and minimize any elements of fraud and corruption creeping in the form of those wanting to score in from those particular tenders. So it's National Treasury and also the PFMA that needs to be strengthened in order for people not to be able to seek for deviations in order for them to open up the door for malfeasance, fraud, and corruption. For instance, if we look at this tender of Digital Vibes, the Minister then of Health, Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, further signed 132 million rands. He signed it off for monies meant for Digital Vibes, a contract, a company belonging to an associate of his, whom he's employed in the past, and he signs 132 million rands worth of monies to be paid into Digital Vibes, speaking of a huge conflict of interest, and knowing very well that that very same Digital Vibes has paid 7,000 rands for the upgrade of his home, and that his son, Dedani Mkhize, has benefited from the proceeds of this unlawful and fraudulently awarded contract of Digital Vibes.
And what I'm reading into this story, Samkele, and as well as all the other corruption stories that we've reported on previously on SABC, is that the involvement of politicians in procurement processes is really problematic. So isn't it time then to have an oversight body that will overlook the procurement process, or perhaps a centralized office that does tenders or maybe the procurement of services, for all government departments?
First and foremost, what are politicians doing within the procurement of tenders within the department of or the various departments where they work in? In my little understanding, politicians have little to do with the administrative work. That is the work of those bureaucrats who are employed to do those works, such as the head of supply chain, those who sit in the tender adjudication committee, those whom are the director generals, the CFOs, etc. Politicians don't have anything to do with the issue of procurement within the departments, unless if it's huge magnitudes of contracts, when they then get to see and make sure that there is diversification and all racial stratas within society are included when it comes to government procurement, and not that this big, strong, accomplished business are the ones who are getting state tenders, but it is diversified, and that small and upcoming SMMEs also get a share of the pie in which these tenders come from when it comes to government procurement, and that it's equally spread across everybody. That's where politicians come in the form of policy framework, the policies that they put in place to make sure that the PFMA is adequately adhered to by bureaucrats, and that it's not abused. Because once you open up the door for politicians to be part of procurement, if Samkele Maseko is close to any politician, Helen Ziller, or who may be in government, or close to Bantu Olomisa, or close to Zandile Masina, or Ronald Lamula, or anyone, or Zizi Godwa, Samkele Maseko's companies then get preferential treatment, because a politician then has full access to tell the bureaucrats, this tender must go to Samkele Maseko Incorporated. This tender must go to Zwelini Mkhize Incorporated, or go to Dedani Mkhize's companies. Then it opens up the field for fraud, corruption, maladministration, and what we are currently seeing. With the ANC, the governing party, having said that in the past 10 years, corruption has escalated with the era of state capture, where they allegedly say those who were in government were acting with impunity and corruption was at an all-time high, where you would find, particularly looking at the charges that politicians are facing within the governing party. Just to give another example, Zandile Kumete within the eThekwini region, on the solid waste tender within the eThekwini municipality. She is fingered to have been benefiting from the service providers of that particular municipality at the Durban Solid Waste. You go to the Free State province and the alleged involvement of the then premier of that province and former ANC provincial chairperson and suspended SG of the ANC, Elias Sekgobela Magashule, and his involvement within tenders within that particular province. And then you go to other provinces and you go to the alleged corruption that may have taken place here in Gauteng with Dr. Samkele Maseko, and how the company belonging to the late husband of Kusela Diko also scored contracts within the Department of Health to provide personal protective equipment. And he then went on to allegedly get leather consultants to take over the contract which was belonging to him and his company without perceived due influence from Loyiso Masuku to her husband to make sure that Kusela Diko's husband scores these particular contracts. And it tells you of the deep-rooted systemic allegations of fraud and corruption that politicians have with those bureaucrats who are in government and how they persuade them in order to award certain companies contracts in order for kickbacks to be paid.
All right, Samkele, thank you so much for your update. We need to end this interview and move on to the Democratic Alliance. We do